This is the problem with Ben Simmons. After sitting out the entire regular season, partially with the Philadelphia 76ers and partially with the Brooklyn Nets, many are questioning the future of Ben Simmons, due to all the uncertainty that has been popping up with Ben as of late. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Ben Simmons has been in a really interesting situation for some time now. Really, this whole saga started in the playoffs last year, where the Sixers were playing the Atlanta Hawks, and Ben had an absolutely atrocious playoff round. And at that point, after the series was over, there was a ton of pressure on Ben from fans, saying that Ben wasn't necessarily all that good, and the Sixers needed to move on from him. There was even pressure from his head coach Doc Rivers at the time, who said he didn't necessarily know if Ben Simmons was a championship level point guard. And shortly after those comments were made by Doc Rivers, and after all the pressure that Ben faced from the fans of Philadelphia and even just fans around the NBA, Ben eventually demanded a trade out of Philly. But after free agency was over, it was pretty clear that the Sixers were not obliging and wanted to keep Ben for the long-term future. But it became pretty evident that the Sixers were not going to oblige with Ben's demands and wanted to keep Ben for the long-term future. But once the regular season started to roll around, Ben was holding out and wasn't playing whatsoever for the Sixers. He originally showed up to practice because he needed to in order to get paid, but he wasn't necessarily paying attention whatsoever. He was even on his phone during practice, and it was pretty clear that Ben was just completely checked out with the Sixers and just didn't want to play for them whatsoever going forward. And based upon that, Ben was kicked off the team and was just in a really weird situation. But shortly after that point, the Sixers were now willing to trade away Ben, but the asking price that they were asking in return for Ben was completely unrealistic, and no team was ever going to make that deal, and the Sixers were also very stern on that offer, so Ben was kind of just stuck with the Sixers until the NBA trade deadline. But once that deadline did come around, there were some rumors that the Brooklyn Nets did want Ben Simmons, as they also had a guy in James Harden that didn't want to be with the Nets anymore, so it was kind of a perfect matching for both sides. And of course, as we all know, that trade did end up getting made, as both sides kind of got what they wanted. The Nets were able to get some depth and also get Ben Simmons, while the Sixers were able to get James Harden to add to that roster and pair him with Joel Embiid. Now, so far looking back on the trade, it kind of seems like both sides lost, to be honest, but of course it still is very early on. But once Ben originally got traded to the Nets, the expectation was he would play relatively soon due to the fact that he didn't necessarily have a physical injury, he was just dealing with mental health issues. But once the regular season came and gone and Ben still didn't play a single game for the Nets, there started to be some concerns that were popping up on where Ben's mind was really at, and especially after the playoffs came and gone, as the Nets did end up losing in the first round to the Celtics, there's even more concerns about why Ben didn't even play in the playoffs. Now, it did come out after the season did end that Ben did have some injuries with his back and actually had to get surgery on it after the season did end, but it seems like there was a point with the Nets that Ben was able to play, but he wasn't playing, which certainly is somewhat of a concern, and brings up the question on whether Ben Simmons is a good teammate or not. But all those issues that I mentioned before in the video are in the past, and the real question is, how is Ben Simmons going to fare going forward with the Nets? Now, I think this is a very interesting question because nobody really knows how Ben Simmons will play going forward. Now, of course, the first question would be, is Ben Simmons actually going to play? Now, of course, in my opinion, I do think he will play for the Nets next season, but the biggest question to me personally is, how will he play, where will he play, and how will he fit in with these other players on the Nets? Now, I think early on, it's going to be a slow process. Early on, I see Ben as being just a supplementary type guy, maybe a guy that just runs the pick and lob or pick and roll in general as the roll man, maybe has the ability to run the offense for certain plays here and there, but I don't necessarily see Ben as becoming a big focal point of the Nets offense early on. Defensively, I still think he's going to be a really good defender for the Nets, even at the start of the season, but as the season does progress and as Ben hopefully starts to regain his confidence, that's really where I start to see Ben becoming the main playmaker on this team. Because of course, course, throughout his career, he's proven the ability to be a phenomenal passer and playmaker, and I think on this Nets team, a guy like Ben with that passing and playmaking ability would be huge for them. Just being able to make guys like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant's lives easier would just make it that much more difficult on whatever opposing defense is guarding these guys, and also the fact that Ben doesn't necessarily need to be a top 2 guy on the team would also take a ton of pressure off him and certainly help his confidence going forward as well. Because in my opinion, although Ben didn't necessarily have the ability to shoot, and I don't personally think he's ever going to have that ability, I think it's pretty clear at this point, I still do think Ben has all the talent in the world. And for me, the reason why he played so poorly in that Hawks series when he was still on the Sixers was mostly due to mental stuff. I think that was pretty clear, and it wasn't necessarily due to talent. Another reason could have certainly been the fit with Joel Embiid, and the fact that both of these guys needed to do their damage in the paint in order to be effective could have certainly clogged up the paint for the other guy and made the other player's life a lot more difficult, and I think we of course saw that in that series. And the fact that he's now playing with guys like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, who are phenomenal 3-point shooters, is certainly going to be a big benefit for Ben. So I think the fact that Ben did change destinations and plays for the Brooklyn Nets now, and hopefully as he does play next season and as he starts to regain his confidence, I think he could potentially get back to the level of Ben Simmons of old. Now of course it's not ideal that a guy like Ben could lose all that confidence the way that he did, but at the same time, at least it's a confidence issue rather than a talent issue. If Ben just didn't have any talent and maybe he played really well one season, you're probably only talking about a one-year wonder. But the fact that Ben has so much talent and the reason why he played so poorly was due to confidence mostly, would actually lead you to believe that he would be able to get back to that level of play, or at the very least become a serviceable player, which I think he will be, and he's probably going to be much better than just a serviceable player. But of course there's also a possibility that Ben Simmons never fully regains his confidence back, and maybe he just turns into a player that's serviceable or decent, but not necessarily anywhere near the Ben Simmons of old. Because Ben has proven the ability to lose all his confidence in the past, and if he was able to do so in the past, why wouldn't he be able to do so in the future? And why would it be a guarantee that he would regain his confidence after completely losing it? And of course, a player who completely loses all their confidence also has a capability of falling out of the NBA in a few seasons. Now, I personally don't think this will be the case for Ben going forward. I think he's going to be at the very least a pretty good to good player. But of course, confidence is a big issue for Ben, and this certainly is a possibility for him going forward. But of course, at this point, nobody really knows what the future does hold for Ben, only time will tell. But in my opinion, I think confidence is the biggest thing for any player, but specifically Ben. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think the future holds for Ben Simmons? Do you think he could potentially get back to the level of play that he was playing at in the past, or do you not think so? But anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy it, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.